it is improving, or it is changing. Some people might see it as an improvement, some people might not see it as. So I will say it is improving to be more, or is changing to be more accepting of men of any age to really express how they are feeling.
People in general allow for that space for us to be able to express how we're feeling in whatever way, shape, and form that we choose to. Of course, always in a respectful way. And that's something, that in therapy we talk about that for those that don't know how to do those in healthy ways. But the point is to allow them to do it.
To make friends with each other.
I think that's a big problem now in modern times, because you hear about the suicide rates going up. I think that's a big reason for it. Men aren't allowed to talk about it with safe people. So if you talk about masculinity crisis, that's a crisis right there.
I think that men find friends very easily in terms of like, oh, yo, you lift 240, I lift 242, let's spot each other, like basketball or whatever. But I think that we have superficial relationships in those friendships, in which like it's very like surface level, like coming back to what you're talking about. We don't talk about feelings and things like that. That comes back to how, you're brought up and how like boys are taught in certain ways, how we go about talking to each other and how we go about expressing ourselves.
How much of this is men putting ourselves in a little box? I can tell you, I wouldn't have shared my emotions with people when I was younger, but I have people in my life now who I feel completely comfortable sharing my insecurities, my vulnerabilities, how I'm feeling. That ends up being one of the reasons why men end up with limited friends, because, I mean, how many people can you actually feel like you can be open and honest with?
But there's something holding people back.
Yeah, and I think it's us. I think we're doing it because we're putting ourselves in this masculinity box, if you will.
I think that vulnerability for men oftentimes is viewed as surrender, and like that is that's an example of weakness in which like someone can possibly take advantage of it, or it used to be viewed as such, where it's like, all right, cool, like he cried, oh, that means he's soft, so now I can challenge him.
And this is something that I really struggle with. As a black man that grew up in the hood, you couldn't be soft. You couldn't come outside. You know what I'm saying? So you had to take on this persona in order to be a quote unquote man. As I got older, I realized I still had to do that with women. I had to be a certain way for them to look at me as a man. And if I didn't perform in that manner, they also called me a bitch.
Yeah, they want a real, like...
Right?
Poster.
So it's like, as progressive as I may want to be, is the world accepting of that as a whole? Because even if the other men don't like it, but the women like it, I might be like, I don't care what the guys think, as long as the women like it.
Now, that's an interesting point. That, to me, minus that last part, was pointing out, like, why exactly what I was trying to say earlier. Sometimes it's not just like, okay, men are holding men back, and that's why we're not evolving, or that's why we're not sharing. It's also that the spaces that we come up in. And I'm saying this also professionally, like I've had to coach parents, moms and dads, of the way, and I've listened to the way they speak to their sons. And I'm saying this more about the boys because young girls don't usually have this issue. Everybody traditionally allows girls to express themselves, right? It's little boys that we have this issue with, where we don't tell them it's okay and ask them what's wrong and helping them validate their lived experience so that they don't run from emotions. They learn to embrace them, but more importantly, learn to pinpoint what is it that's actually bothering them so that we can address it and hopefully move forward. And that's what he was talking about. If I'm getting it on both sides, if the guys don't like it and the women I would want to pursue don't really seem like they're okay with me being open, then why the hell would I want to be open? Why would I want to share then if nobody in my immediate life seems like they're actually okay or comfortable with that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I do think that things are changing, because even if just when I was, say, elementary age, so like you're 6 to 10 years old, even I'd say that age demographic when I was there in the early 2000s and now, I do see that kids, and especially like younger boys, are able to more often than it used to be, express their emotions
Mm.
through, whether typically it's their parents because it's right there, or like a friend. But oftentimes you need like that mature person to really give you solid advice. But especially to see nowadays where it may not be perfect, but it is moving in a direction to where it is more accepted than it used to be for men of any age to have that feeling of vulnerability. It may not be to the extent that more progressive people might want it to be,
Mhm.
but I do want to preface that it is improving, or it is changing. Some people might see it as an improvement, some people might not see it as. So I will say it is improving to be more, or is changing to be more accepting of men of any age to really express how they are feeling.
And I think that that's beautiful, and I really want that for generations to come, is that people in general allow for that space for us to be able to express how we're feeling in whatever way, shape, and form that we choose to. Of course, always in a respectful way. And that's something, that in therapy we talk about that for those that don't know how to do those in healthy ways. But the point is to allow them to do it. And a lot of those behaviors that we see people do that get them in trouble, that get them, making maybe not the best choices, a lot of that will start to die down because they're allowing a lot of that stuff to come out and not burying it deep down and wondering why they explode on people, or they have these explosive situations that, get them in jail or get them in trouble. Those things don't have to happen largely. We can avoid a lot of that stuff, but we have to be willing to actually allow for that space, like you were just talking about, for us to be able to be open. And then for us as the guys to work on being able to learn that language to express it to people. So it's a twofold approach that we have to employ.
You know what I'm saying? Like that's not my type of guy. He's not my type of guy, and I can't be open with sex or accepting having gay friends.
That's what you like?
But I can't. Right. You can't be open about certain things because then you become questionable and you're pushed out of the safe space.
Sex is a difficult thing for men to talk about, even with each other, especially if you do have some kind of kink.
Because you're not allowed to be vulnerable. You're not allowed to be weak. You're not allowed to fail. And a lot of people that, when you say the suicide rates, you give up because you have nowhere to turn.
I kind of disagree with you on the fact about that pressure is causing. I think it's more the lack of support and guidance for a lot of guys. Like, they don't know where to turn. Like a lot of guys, suicide, I think, is like when you lose hope, right? So they just don't have hope.
What about not wanting to go get it? Because there's places to be, there's people to go. You can go to church.
I mean,
you can go to therapy.
As
There's
much
places
as you
to
say
go.
that, but I
Shout
don't
out to
feel
therapy.
like, when you say guys don't want to express weakness, I think taking that step is hard for a lot of men, because then that expresses weakness. It's hard for a lot of guys.